Hey, welcome. Today I'm discussing some injuries regarding personal injury matters with my friend from Huntsville, Alabama, Morris Lilienthal. Morris, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, Guy. Good to see you, and thanks for having me here. I'm Morris Lilienthal. I'm a trial lawyer from Huntsville, Alabama. Practiced law now for 15 years and practiced with the law firm of Martinson and Deason here in Huntsville. We're an older, long-established law firm that's been in business since 1937. We're a full-service law firm with 5 lawyers and about 14 support staff.
Well, so a lot of times personal injury lawyers get a bad rap, especially if you're going through Alabama, if you're going through Florida, you see all those billboards all over the place. So my question is, the personal injury lawyers that I know do not match a lot of that connotation that you see out there with the billboard lawyers. So my question to you is, why do you practice personal injury law?
Well, I guess, Guy, it has a lot to do with my upbringing, I guess I should say, and how I grew up. And so, first of all, I kind of grew up around the courthouse. My mother was what we call here in Alabama, JA, or a judicial assistant, meaning she worked for a judge in the county back home. So we lived in a little duplex house a couple blocks from the courthouse. And so I'd get out of school and I'd walk downtown and I'd sit around the courthouse and go sit on the bench with judge and do. So I kind of grew up around the courthouse. But I think if you get to know me, you know that I'm a people person. I enjoy being with people, hanging out with people, getting to know people, an outgoing person. And so by doing trial work and being a plaintiff's lawyer, as you say, a personal injury lawyer, I get to know people and help people, and people of all types, races, religion, creeds, backgrounds. And what I found is that by getting to know them, I really enjoy meeting them and helping them. And a lot of times, they come to me most of the times in their darkest hour. And so, having grown up a lot of times in kind of, not the best circumstances, doing had a great mother who raised me as a single parent, but it was one of those things that we often didn't have a lot of the things that we'd really want to have. And so kind of helping people in their darkest times and helping people get through a bad time and making that turn that page to try to see the bright side of things and to help them recover, kind of where I connect with people, and it really puts a smile on my face and warms my heart when I can do that for people.
So some personal injury lawyers, or what even within personal injury law, are generalists. Others have a tendency to only focus on certain cases. Where do you put yourself in that camp?
Well, I think like anything, I think some things we're better suited for based upon our skill set, based upon our the firm and the makeup of who we are and where we are. I do mainly motor vehicle accidents and some other premises liability cases. I don't do any medical malpractice cases. For example, you have the skill set as a chiropractor to know the medical side of things and be able to dive into where it's not something that I just don't have. I don't have the training or the skill set and haven't had the time to learn those things. That when I get calls on medical malpractice cases, for example, I'll usually turn to someone like you here in Alabama or someone else around the country that has that skill set or special training to bring them on board to kind of take the lead on the case. Because at the end of the day, my goal is to get the best possible result for my client. And if that means referring the case out or bringing somebody else on board, then that's what I'm going to do to get the best possible result.
And that's the same thing with me. Even though I do medical malpractice cases, I really only do two or three types of medical malpractice cases. I do spine surgery cases, I do general surgery cases, and then I do general medicine or delayed diagnosis. I don't handle baby cases, I don't handle CP cases, I don't handle shoulder dystocia cases, even though I know about them, because there are some folks that are out there that just specialize in those areas, and I would be doing my client a disservice by me handling the case as opposed to referring it to the person who specializes.
I agree 100%.
Now let's talk about car crash cases because they're common motor vehicle cases, and this is where a lot of folks that I see have a disconnect, and I think we need to tease it out to give some people some information. When somebody's injured in an automobile accident, and it's because of somebody else's fault, sometimes they get hooked on the concept that I shouldn't have to pay for anything, and the other insurance company needs to pay my medical bills as I go ahead and get treated. And then when I talk to them and I say to them, well, no, there's a certain process that we have to go through to look at medical expenses, they look at me like I have two heads. Do you see that?
Yeah, we're often asked at the beginning of a case, it's like, well, I need to have these bills paid, and maybe they've already contacted the other insurance company before they consult with us and retain us, or they're confused and they're saying, well, they're at fault. How come they're not going to pay the bills right now? I need to go to the doctor. I don't have, if my client has health insurance, I don't have the copays or deductible percentage of clients because health insurance is so expensive. They don't have health insurance. So they're like, well, I need treatment, but I can't afford it. Why don't they pay for it? They're responsible. He pulled out and hit me. He ran the red light, not me. And, we just kind of have to explain to them the process of how it works. And then at the end of the day, they are liable to you under the laws of our jurisdiction, but they're not going to pay that up front. And so we kind of have to work through that with them and logistically figure out a way that they can get treatment on the front end, so then we can get them compensated for the cost of that treatment on the back end.
So this is a big objection that I get. I was in an automobile accident at the beginning of October. And on my automobile accident policy, I have medical payments coverage. And that's coverage specifically for medical expenses. When I tell a client, hey, you have to go through your insurance, they get all up in arms and they go ahead and say, well, I'm going to get charged for this. I'm going to get rated. Is that the way it works? Why don't you sort that out for us?
Yeah, and that's a good thing, is that one of the things that you need to know, folks, is that, if you're looking at your insurance, a lot of things you want to, we all hear about insurance, auto insurance, we think about liability coverage. Well, that's certainly important in case you or someone driving your car is at fault. But one of the most important things about auto insurance is making sure you have the proper either medical payments coverage. We call it MedPay for short here in Alabama. Some states have PIP coverage, which is a similar type of thing. And then uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. Those coverages, Guy, as you know, are in place to protect you and the people riding in your vehicle. And so one thing you can do when you purchase insurance is that if you purchase the proper coverages and the amounts that may fully compensate and cover your family, you can protect yourself. You can't always make sure that the person that hits you has enough coverage, or make sure that you can probably afford having a lot of money sitting aside for copays and deductibles that might one day arise if you're in an accident. But those coverages, that medical payments coverage, will pay out-of-pocket medicals right then and there. And my experience over the years is that when you apply for and use medical payments coverage, or you apply for and use uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, is that it really doesn't put you at a high risk bracket. It doesn't kick you off of coverage, because it's a no-fault claim, meaning you weren't at fault when you're using that claim typically in an auto accident. And in fact, what happens in most cases here in Alabama, if there is a third party who has coverage and you use your medical payments coverage, typically the MedPay is subrogated, meaning they have to be reimbursed out of the liability claim. Often we can get that reimbursement reduced, meaning they will take less on that than what they paid out. But the advantage to it is we can get the client reimbursed or bills paid right away. We don't have to wait to the conclusion of the claim if we use that method.
And that's something that's important because, people are under stress in and of itself by being in an accident, and then they're getting these bills from these providers, and these providers need to be paid, but yet they're scared to go through their own insurance. So what I heard you say was there are two different types of claims. So let's break that out. Their first party claim and a third party claim, right? So why don't we explain that, how the first party claim is sort of contractual and you're not going to get dinged on the back end because you're making a claim under the policy.
Yeah, that's right. So you've got two types of claims. You have a claim against the at-fault driver for your medical bills, pain and suffering, out-of-pockets, lost wages, scarring, those kinds of things, the traditional types of things that most people may be familiar with. But then you have your own insurance that covers you and those riding in your vehicle. And then you have the claim there that is a contractual basis, meaning you have paid a healthy premium every month. And in return for that premium, the insurance company that you insured with in turn will insure you for those things that you purchased. For example, we're talking about medical payments coverage. That means if you bought $5,000 worth of medical payments coverage, then they will pay up to $5,000 of out-of-pocket medical cost right then and there. So if you've already paid those costs, let's say we had a client who went in and went to the hospital and they had a $300 copay at the ER, we could submit that $300 invoice and they would either pay the unpaid invoice, or if the client's already paid it, then they would write a check to the client for $300 to reimburse them for that amount. But again, because that's a first party claim, then you're not going to get dinged. Your insurance rates are not going to go up and you're not going to be in a higher risk bracket.
And also, if you have health insurance, or if you have Medicare, or if you have Medicaid, and you don't use that money, they're going to say, well, we're not paying the claim because we're not primary.
Yeah, that's right. That has happened a whole lot, is that a lot of the health insurance, the ones you mentioned, and I've had that come up with United Healthcare and some other private insurance companies, it's written into the contract that the med pay has to be exhausted, or in other words, paid out first. And there has to be proof that it's paid out first before the health insurance will then kick in and start paying.
Right. And that's why some folks who have, see multiple providers and have to go through the medical system a lot of times need to contact a lawyer so the lawyer can help them go through this system. Because everybody's going to have their hand out, everybody's going to want payment, everyone's going to, be, sending the collection. And a lot of times that's one of the things that a lawyer does, is the lawyer is able to help navigate the system with the least amount of pain. So the client can work on getting better and getting their life in order, as opposed to dealing with all that extraneous garbage, right?
You're spot on, Guy. And I had this conversation with someone that was looking at hiring a lawyer, and he was kind of, one of his questions was, well, what's the advantage to getting a lawyer involved? And not only do I think that most good experienced trial lawyers like ourselves can actually, get a larger recovery than a person pro se or on their own, but I think that the biggest, or maybe one of the biggest advantages, what you're saying, is navigating the waters, knowing who to contact, knowing where the pitfalls are. So for example, here in Alabama, what we run into a lot is one of the major hospitals here, like a lot of the hospitals, use a third-party vendor to handle their billing and accident case. And what happens is this vendor will not bill the client's health insurance. The reason they don't want to bill the health insurance is because they want to try to get paid out of the accident case. Well, if the client's health insurance is an in-network provider, they don't have an option but to bill it. But if you don't know that, and you don't know who to contact there, and you don't know that you've got to send them a written correspondence to request them to bill the health insurance, then you might end up, for example, we've had a case recently with a client who had a $138,000 hospital bill. The bill would have been satisfied for about $25,000 on health insurance. And so that's the discounted rate. But if the client didn't know that and didn't have us involved to get them to get that bill to be applied, the client at the end of the day on their own would be stuck with a $138,000 bill instead of a $25,000.
Right, because by that time, the health insurance clock for submitting the claim to the health insurance company would have run, and the claim would have been stale. And so then the injured person not only has to deal with the other garbage, they have a hospital or a healthcare provider saying, hey, we want 5 times what we would have gotten through health insurance.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So having someone that knows the waters and can navigate through there can really save you a lot of headache and a lot of trouble and pain and anguish and fear. And even for the people like ourselves who are experienced, there's still a lot of pitfalls and things that we have to deal with and navigate. But because we know those waters, we know what the typical response is going to be, and we know how to counterpunch back. Whereas a potential client or somebody handling on their own, there's just no way you can navigate that and do it successfully.
Exactly. Next question, my friend. You've been doing this a long time now, 15 years. Can you help the folks who might be listening to this with giving us an idea of a common mistake that you see them make, which comes back to bite them in the long run? Say somebody wants to handle their own claim. What would be one pitfall that you would recommend that they avoid?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is not following up consistently with medical care and treatment, and not letting the providers that you're seeing know everything that's hurting and when and where it originated. because as you know as well as I do that um, one of the things that we have to do in making a claim, presenting a claim to the insurance company or presenting a claim to a jury, is that we have the legal standard of causation, medical causation. We have to show folks that the injuries you're claiming were caused by the accident. And what happens is people oftentimes, a lot of times will just, hey, I don't like going to the doctor. I don't want to go to the doctor. So they wait or delay to go to the doctor. Or when they go to the doctor, they don't relate that everything's they're having issues with is stemming from the accident. Or the other thing that happens is they'll go to the doctor. For example, I had a client just the other day who had fractured collarbone, but she was also having other issues. So when I tell clients that, doctors tend to say, well, they're going to treat the biggest and worst injury first. Well, that's fine, and I understand that from a medical treatment standpoint, but we also want to make sure that folks, if you're out there, you want to advise the doctor, nurse practitioner, whoever you're seeing, everything from the tippy top of your head to the tips of your toes that's hurting, because we want to get it documented and into the records, not only so you can get better, which is the primary goal, but we also want to get it documented. So going on down the road, weeks and a month, 2 months, 3 months later, if you're having problems with that knee that wasn't but just a mild inconvenience to start with, and everything else is healed up, now it turns out you've got a major knee injury. But if it's been 3 months down the road, guy, you know as well as I do, if it wasn't documented, it's going to be harder to relate it back to the accident. So seeking medical care, being consistent with your medical care, and making sure you document any and all is very important.
And not only that, if you are not following up with your doctor for a certain reason, sometimes people are called out of town for work, they have a family emergency, they have another health issue, they need to tell their doctor why they didn't follow up or why they were unable to make physical therapy 3 times a week and they were only going once a week. That needs to be documented.
Agreed, 100%. Yeah, and that's real simple, folks. If you can't go, that's okay, but make sure you call in, because what happens is when we get those records, or a jury sees those records, or an insurance company sees those records, it doesn't say that Mr. Martino was gone because of X, Y, and Z if he doesn't say anything about that. It just says no show. And then, a jury's impression or an insurance company's impression on that is, well, if he or she was hurting bad enough, they'd have gone to the doctor or gone for treatment. So I guess they weren't hurting anymore.
And as a patient or as somebody who's been injured, I have a duty under the law, which is a big term. I have a duty to mitigate or to limit my damages. And so one of the arguments that we see when there's a gap in treatment from the insurance company is this. Hey, guy, your client made their condition worse or last longer because they did not follow the doctor's advice. And because of that, we are not responsible for that.
Yeah, you definitely, that can be an issue. I think we all have a duty to mitigate our own damages without question in every jurisdiction. And, just make sure you're following doctor's orders. And again, look, we all have sick children. We all have things come up in our personal life. We can't make an appointment here or there. That's understandable. But you don't want to just not show up, as Guy says. You want to document that, call into the office and say, hey, look, I've had this come up. My child's sick. I'm not going to be able to make my appointment this afternoon. Can I make my next one, or can we reschedule this?
Next question, my friend. If you were if one of your clients was in an automobile accident in another state, or if one of your loved ones, or somebody who just looks at you as a trusted advisor, how would you tell them, if they're thinking that they need a lawyer, how would you tell them that they should go ahead and try to find a lawyer who will meet their needs?
Well, thankful in today's times, we have a lot of great resources with the technology that we have out there. That, certainly get online and start doing your individual research. You can always Google around and start looking for people in that area and reading online reviews and third-party validation reviews. But, for me, one of the things that I always look at is, for example, if I was looking for an attorney in out of state in your area, like where you live, Guy, I would probably, even though I know it may be not something that you practice, but I needed a business attorney for a client of mine or a family member of mine in your part of Florida, then I would just reach out to you and I'd say, hey, God, this is the situation that I've got. This is what's going on. So One of the things you can always do is kind of reach out if you've got family or friends in that area and vet them. I mean, what you want to try to find someone who's used that attorney. I mean, there's certain qualifications that you would probably generally want to look for if you were looking for a lawyer. But there are probably a fair amount of lawyers that would have the qualifications to handle that case in that jurisdiction. Then you want to know, how do I narrow it down from there? And one of the best ways is to find somebody maybe who's used them and start validating and vetting that person. So, certainly networking through social media or networking through people who live in the area would be one key way to do it. I know I do that all the time. Um, you know, one of the things you can do is that if you have a trusted lawyer in your area or your state or wherever you are, but you need a lawyer somewhere else. For example, if someone came to me and they needed a lawyer in Knoxville, Tennessee, well, I may know somebody, but they're a client of mine, so they'll call Morris and say, because they know, like, and trust me, then they'll reach out to me, and then maybe I can put them in touch with somebody I know.
Yeah, so that's one thing that there are a lot of qualified lawyers in a lot of areas. And one of the things that I tell folks is that you really have to make sure that you and the lawyer jive. They could be the greatest lawyer in the world, but if they don't return your phone calls and you're somebody who needs a phone call returned, you're never going to be happy. You're never going to be satisfied. They can get you the greatest result, but you're still going to feel like you didn't get what you need. So you really have to look at your needs and make sure that that law firm or that lawyer will meet those needs.
I agree 100%. And I think that's one of the things that the reasons in terms of the way I practice that I think is a little different than other people is it's my mission that 9 times out of 10, unless there's just some extraordinary circumstance, I meet all my clients and I sign them up myself because I want to get to know them. I want to eyeball them. I want to see who I'm going to be sitting next to at trial if we have to go to trial, and vice versa. I want them to get to know me and like me because they're hiring me. They're hiring my firm, but they're certainly hiring me as a lawyer. And so I would encourage anyone listening that if you're looking to hire a lawyer, you want to meet that lawyer. And sometimes if it's a matter you're here and the matter happens to be out of state, you can do a virtual meeting. You can get online and have a web meeting like this or have a phone call and do. But I think a guy is spot on with the point of you get to know someone. You've got to know, do you relate to that person? Do you have a connection with that person somehow? Because that's important because there are many lawyers that could probably handle your case and do a good job with it. But the question is do you relate to that person? Are they going to meet your expectations?
And it's a lot different than on the doctor side. You hear it all the time. Great doctor, horrible bedside manner. But you want to know something? If I'm going in for brain surgery or heart surgery, I'm going to be under. I don't care about the doctor's bedside manner. But in a lawsuit or in a law, I want him to be or she to be the best doctor. But in a lawsuit, there's a lot of interaction. There's a lot of people time. There's a lot of communication. So it's not like a one-off with a doctor. Just my opinion.
I agree 100%. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I'll take the skill over the no bedside manner anytime when it comes to something that it's going to be a one-time or a one-off shot.
That's right. That's right. But there is, anytime you're involving a lawyer, especially in a personal injury matter, there's a lot of communication back and forth with the law firm. And the client who is actively doing treatment is going to have questions periodically. So they're going to want to be able to communicate with their lawyer and finding out and knowing who they are is vital to having a good representation.
And if the lawyer has a horrible bedside manner and you don't get along with the lawyer, how are you going to trust that they tell you that this is a fair settlement, the offer is within the range, you can consider it, especially if you think the person's a jerk?
Yeah, no, you can't. And what I can tell you is that I think that one of the things that's helped me throughout the years is building that trust up with clients because I meet with them on the front end and I spend time with them and we do communicate with them throughout the process that I think I build trust and rapport. And what I find more times than not is that because of that relationship that we've developed, they usually look at me and say, Morris, you're the lawyer. That's why I hired you. I trust you. I'm going to go with whatever your recommendation. But you don't get there without that relationship being built throughout it.
Absolutely. One final question, my friend. Without sharing any client confidences, can you give us a story or some type of factual scenario that made you really proud to be a personal injury lawyer?
Well, you know, I guess there's several I could think about, but early on in my career, and it was really not a personal injury. It was more of a fraud and breach of contract case, but it was kind of how I got started in this area of the law. And so here I was, a baby lawyer, and I was going up against two of the biggest law firms with multiple practices with 100 lawyers plus around Alabama and Southeast. And we were litigating, and I represented at my old firm about 2,500 people. And they were essentially opt-outs from a class action. Folks, what that means is these were people who did not want to settle as a part of the class action, and they wanted to file their own individual cases. So I had to answer discovery for 2,500 people.
A lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and I ended up putting. We had trial groups, little groups of people here and here and here and here that were going to try their cases first in 5 different counties in Alabama, and so I put up over 80 people for deposition, and the defense lawyers in the first county that was kind of going to be going out to trial first filed this humongous motion for summary judgment. And what that is, folks, is just a brief to say, hey, there's no case here, court. This case needs to be dismissed. There's nothing for a jury to hear. And I wrote a 65-page brief back in responding, and was able to argue the motion in front of the court and then successfully win that motion. And then we were able to end up settling that case after their motion was denied, and settling and getting over 10 times what they would have gotten in the class action settlement. And probably about a year after that, I was in depositions in another case with some lawyers that were involved in that case. And I'm probably a 2.5, 3-year lawyer at that point. And one of the lawyers in that case looked and said, well, I know one thing, that Marsh Lilienthal, he'll sling a book at you when it comes to writing a brief. And it was a compliment to me, because he knew that I was going to throw a big, long, fat brief at him, whatever I needed to do to on behalf of my client to do it. And so that was really a cool thing early on in my career, and I really learned a lot about being involved in a case of that magnitude.
Great. Morris, thank you so much for your time. If somebody is listening to this and they want to contact you, where might they find you on the interwebs?
Sure, yeah. Again, you can find us at martinsonandbeeson.com. It's MARTINSON and Beeson, BEASON. And you can reach me at 256-533-1660. Yeah, thanks so much for your time and allowing me to chat with you today.
Great.